Dr. Ju Kim held tight to her seat as the ship shook around her. Red lights flashed and alarms screamed. Through the viewport, she saw the orange-red planet Eurytus growing larger by the second. All crew, brace for impact. Captain Tay's voice cracked over the speakers. Engine failure is total. Repeat, brace for impact. Ju closed her eyes. This was not how her research mission was supposed to go. She was the best xenobiologist from Earth, sent to study the strange plants of Eurytus. The desert planet was said to hold secrets that could help humans grow food in the harshest places. The ship dropped faster. Metal screamed against metal. Someone was yelling in the next compartment. Beside her, the alien diplomat Don sat with his 4 eyes closed. His blue-gray skin looked pale, even for a Linerite. His breathing tubes on the sides of his neck fluttered rapidly. "We will survive this," Ju told him, though she wasn't sure herself. Don opened his upper set of eyes. "If we do not, it has been an honor to work with humans. Your kind has much to teach the stars." The ship hit something hard, bounced, and then slammed down again. Ju's head snapped forward, then back. Pain shot through her neck. The lights went out. In the darkness, she heard the terrible sound of the ship's hull breaking apart. Then silence. Ju woke to the smell of smoke and burning plastic. Her head throbbed. She touched her forehead, and her hand came away wet with blood. But she could move. She was alive. "Hello," she called into the dim red emergency lighting. "Is anyone there?" A weak sound came from nearby. Ju unbuckled her safety harness and stood on shaky legs. The floor of the ship tilted at an odd angle. She made her way toward the sound. She found Don trapped under a fallen metal beam. His lower right arm was badly crushed, and a jagged piece of the ship had cut deep into his side. Blue-purple blood pooled beneath him. "Hold on," Ju said. She pushed against the beam with all her strength. It moved just enough for Don to pull himself free with his 3 good arms. "The others?" he asked, his voice a weak whisper. Ju looked around. The front half of the ship was simply gone. Where Captain Ta and the bridge crew had been, there was now only twisted metal opening to the harsh landscape of Eurytus. "I don't think anyone else made it," she said softly. She helped down to a seat and checked his wounds. The cut in his side was deep and already showing signs of infection. His crushed arm hung useless. "I need the medical supplies," she said, and began searching through the wreckage. Most of the supplies were destroyed or missing. She found only a small kit with basic bandages, nothing that would help with Don's serious injuries. "The emergency beacon," Don said through labored breaths. "We must activate it." Ju found the beacon under debris. Its case was cracked, and when she tried to turn it on, nothing happened. "It's broken," she said. "I'll try to fix it, but—" She looked out through the broken hull. The landscape of Eurytus stretched out before her. Red sand and rocks as far as she could see. Strange, twisted plants grew in patches. 3 suns hung in the sky, making the air shimmer with heat. "We're stranded," she said. Don's breathing became more labored. The infection in his wound was spreading quickly. His blue-gray skin was turning dark around the edges of the cut. "You must leave me," he said. "Find help." Ju shook her head. "No, we survived the crash together. We'll survive this planet together." But as she looked at his worsening condition, she wasn't sure how much time he had left. Without proper medical help, the alien diplomat would die before any rescue could come. Ju took a deep breath and stepped out onto the planet's surface. She had to find something to help him. She was a xenobiologist after all. If this planet had plants, maybe some of them could save Dawn's life. The heat hit Ju like a wall as she walked away from the crashed ship. Sweat ran down her face within minutes. She pulled up the collar of her uniform to shield her neck from the 3 suns beating down on the red desert. Water, medicine, shelter, she said to herself. These were the things they needed most. Ju climbed a small hill to get a better view. The land around her seemed empty at first glance, but her trained eye began to spot life. Small plants grew in the shadows of rocks. They were nothing like earth plants. Some had blue leaves that seemed to sparkle. Others had thick, twisting stems with no leaves at all. She took samples of each plant she found, careful not to touch them directly. On a new planet, even the smallest plant could be deadly. After an hour of searching, Jiwoo found a patch of larger plants in a shallow valley. They looked like a cross between earth cacti and giant mushrooms. Their tops spread out like umbrellas, creating shade underneath. Dark spots on their sides leaked a clear liquid that pooled on the ground. Jiwoo tested the liquid with her portable scanner. Her eyes widened at the results. "Water," she whispered. "They store water." She collected as much as she could in empty containers from her pack. The liquid wasn't pure water. It had minerals and plant chemicals in it, but her scanner said it was safe to drink. As she worked, Jiwoo noticed something else about these strange plants. Their bases were covered in long, sharp thorns. The thorns were straight and strong, almost like needles. She carefully broke off a few and stored them in a sample tube. "These might be useful," she said to herself. The sky was turning a deep orange as the largest sun began to set. The temperature was dropping quickly. Jiwoo hurried back to the ship, feeling the cold replacing the heat with alarming speed. When she reached the wreck, she found Don shivering. His condition had gotten worse. The wound in his side had a strange yellow crust forming around it, and his breathing was shallow. "I found water," Jiwoo said, helping him drink. "And I've collected plants to study. Some might help with your wound." Don drank weakly. "This planet, it feels wrong. Like it's watching us." Jiwoo checked his temperature. He was burning with fever, which explained his strange words. "Save your strength," she said. "I need to test these samples." Through the night, as the temperature outside dropped below freezing, Jiwoo worked with her portable lab equipment. Most of it had survived the crash. She tested each plant sample, looking for anything with healing properties. Near morning, she found something promising. The liquid from the umbrella plants had antibacterial properties, and when mixed with the juice from one of the blue-leaved plants, it formed a paste that could fight infection. Jiwoo applied the paste to Don's wound. He moaned in pain, but didn't wake up. "Please work," she whispered. As the first sun rose, Jiwoo stepped outside again. The cold night had given way to heat once more. She noticed movement in the distance. Large shapes moved across the horizon, animals of some kind. This planet had more life than she had first thought. A strange sound made her look up. High above, something flew through the sky. It wasn't a bird. It had long, ribbon-like wings that shimmered in the sunlight. Jiwoo felt a mix of wonder and fear. This world was beautiful but dangerous, and they were trapped on it with no way to call for help. When she returned to check on Don, she found him awake but delirious. His fever was worse, and the paste she had made wasn't working fast enough. The infection was spreading. Dark lines moved up from the wound toward his chest. "I need something stronger," she said. Don grabbed her hand with surprising strength. His 4 eyes focused on her face. "The planet," he whispered. "It speaks. Can you hear it?" Jiwoo shook her head. "Rest. I'll find something to help you." But as she prepared to go out again, she wondered if Dawn was right. Sometimes, when the wind blew across the red sand, it almost sounded like whispers, like the planet itself was alive and aware of the strangers who had crashed upon it. By the middle of the second day, Jiwoo knew she was losing Dawn. His blue-gray skin had turned almost black around the wound. His breathing came in short gasps. When he opened his eyes, they were cloudy and unfocused. "I failed," Jiwoo said to herself as she changed the plant paste on his wound. Nothing she tried was working fast enough. The infection was too strong, too strange. Earth medicine might have saved him, but they had almost none left. As the second sun set, Jiwoo sat beside Dawn and held his good hand. His skin felt cold now, not hot. That was a bad sign. His body was shutting down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know what else to do." As if in answer, A strong wind blew through the broken ship. It carried the red sand of Eridus and something else, a sweet smell Juwu hadn't noticed before. She looked up and saw something small blow in and land on Dawn's chest. It was a piece of one of the umbrella plants, with a long thorn still attached. Juwu picked it up and studied it. The thorn was unlike any she had seen before. It was hollow in the middle, like a needle, but strong as metal. In the fading light, it seemed to glow faintly. A memory came to Juwu then, her grandmother, back on Earth, telling stories of the old days. Before modern medicine, people used needles and thread to close wounds. They called it stitching. That's it, Juwu said, standing up suddenly. I need to close the wound. But she had no thread. She looked around the ship for anything that might work. Wires were too stiff. Cloth would tear. Then her hand went to her long black hair. It was strong. It might work. Without another thought, Juwu took out her emergency knife. She gathered her hair in one hand and cut through it with the knife. Long black strands fell around her shoulders. She cut more, until she had a handful of hair. Working quickly, Juwu cleaned the thorn needle with alcohol from the med kit. She separated her hair into thin strands and tested their strength. They were stronger than she expected. This is going to work, she told herself. She cleaned Dawn's wound once more with the plant paste. Then, using the thorn as a needle and her own hair as thread, she began to stitch the edges of the cut together. It was hard work. The wound was deep, and Dawn's skin was tough. But Juwu worked carefully, one stitch at a time. When she was halfway done, Dawn's eyes opened. All four of them focused on her face. "What are you doing?" he asked weakly. "Saving your life," Juwu said, not stopping her work. "An old Earth method. Just stay still." Dawn watched her work for a moment, then said, "You cut your hair. It will grow back," Juwu said. "Your life won't." As she worked, Juwu noticed something strange. Where her hair touched Dawn's skin, a faint glow appeared. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but as she finished the last stitch, she saw it clearly. Her black hair was glowing with a soft blue light where it entered Dawn's body. "That's not normal," she said. Dawn's eyes widened. "It feels strange." Before Juwu could answer, the ground shook. Outside, the 3 moons of Eridus had aligned in the sky, bathing the red desert in silver light. The wound under Juwu's stitches began to pulse with the same blue light. Dawn gasped and his back arched. "What's happening?" Juwu asked, afraid she had made things worse. "The planet," Dawn whispered. "It's inside me now." Juwu watched in amazement as the black infection lines around the wound began to fade. The swelling went down before her eyes. Dawn's breathing became stronger, more regular. But something else was happening too. Around the stitches made from her hair, something new was growing on Dawn's skin. At first, Juwu thought it was some kind of mold or fungus. But as she looked closer, she realized what it was. Hair. Fine, black hair, just like hers, was growing out from the stitches and spreading across Dawn's blue-gray skin. Juwu woke to strange sounds, soft rustling, like leaves moving in wind. She opened her eyes and nearly screamed. Dawn sat across from her, but he looked nothing like before. His entire body was covered in fine black hair, exactly like the hair she had cut from her own head. It grew thickest around the wound she had stitched, but it now covered every part of him that she could see. "Dawn," she asked, backing away slightly. "Are you okay?" All 4 of his eyes opened. They were clearer now, the sickness gone from them. "I am more than okay," he said, looking at his arms. The hair moved slightly, like it was alive. "I feel everything." Juwu reached for her scanner. It showed that Dawn's vital signs were normal, better than normal. The infection was completely gone. "The hair," she said, "it's still growing." Dawn nodded. "It grows from inside. It's part of me now." He stood up slowly. The hair on his body rippled and shifted, adjusting to his movement. He walked to the broken opening of the ship and looked out at the red desert. I can feel the planet, he said. The heat, the wind, everything. Juwu followed him, her scientist mind trying to understand what was happening. My hair, she said. It must have had my DNA in it. And the plant thorn too. They mixed with your body somehow. Don reached out his hand. The hair on his arm stretched out, much longer than it should be able to. It moved like it had its own mind. There is water there, he said, pointing to a spot in the distance where the ground looked no different than anywhere else. Deep underground. I can feel it. Juwu looked where he pointed, then back at him. How do you know? The hair, Don explained. It senses things. Like the roots of a plant can find water. It tells me where things are. This was beyond anything Juwu had seen in her years as a xenobiologist. Human hair growing on an alien body was strange enough. But hair that could sense things. That was impossible. Yet as the day went on, Don proved it was true. He led Juwu to the water he had sensed. They dug, and sure enough, 2 feet down, they found wet sand. A little deeper, and clear water bubbled up. We can survive here now, Juwu said as they filled containers with the precious liquid, at least until rescue comes. Don didn't answer. He was staring at the horizon, his body very still. What is it? Juwu asked. Something is coming, he said. The hair feels vibrations in the ground. Juwu couldn't hear or see anything, but she trusted Don's new senses. They quickly gathered their water and hurried back to the ship. As they reached the crash site, Juwu finally heard what Don had sensed minutes before. A low rumbling sound came from the direction he had been watching. Around a large rock formation came 3 huge animals. They looked like a mix between earth rhinos and lizards. Their scaly bodies were a deep red, matching the sand. Sharp horns grew from their heads and backs. Desert prowlers, Don whispered. The ship's computer had warnings about them. They hunt at midday when most creatures hide from the heat. Juwu and Don ducked inside the ship. The prowlers stopped near the crash site, their large heads swinging back and forth as they sniffed the air. They smell us, Juwu said, fear in her voice. But Don seemed calm. They won't attack. There's something else. He closed his eyes. The hair on his body moved in waves, like it was gathering information. There's a patch of those umbrella plants about half a mile from here, he said. The prowlers are afraid of them. The thorns can hurt even their thick skin. Sure enough, after a few minutes of sniffing around, the prowlers moved away from the ship, avoiding the direction where Juwu had found the umbrella plants. When they were gone, Juwu turned to Don in amazement. How did you know that? About the plants and the prowlers. Don touched the wound on his side, now almost healed and covered in thick hair. The hair knows, he said simply. It's like it remembers things about this planet, things I never knew before. Juwu stared at him, understanding dawning on her face. It's not just my DNA in that hair, she said slowly. It's the planet too. Something in that plant thorn. The 3 together created something new. Don nodded. And it's still changing me. 5 days after the crash, Juwu and Don had settled into a routine. Each morning, they collected water from the underground source Don had found. They gathered edible plants that Juwu tested for food. The crashed ship gave them shelter from the extreme heat and cold. Don's transformation continued. The hair now covered every inch of his body. It changed color sometimes, turning lighter in the heat and darker in the cold. It could stretch out from his body like thousands of tiny fingers, feeling the world around him. We need to find a way to contact help, Juwu said as they sat in the shade of the ship. The emergency beacon is still broken. Don nodded. His eyes looked out at the horizon. There is something else on this planet, he said suddenly, not just animals and plants. Something that doesn't belong. Juwu looked up from the broken beacon she was trying to fix. What do you mean? Metal. Machines. About 2 days' walk from here. Don pointed east. The hair can feel it. Hope rose in Juwoo's chest. It could be an outpost. I remember seeing maps of research stations on Eridus before we crashed. She dug through her damaged tablet until she found a partial map. There was indeed a small station marked in the direction Dawn had pointed. "We should go there," she said. "They might have a working comm system." They packed what supplies they had and set out the next morning. The three suns were barely up, giving them some hours before the worst heat would hit. As they walked, Dawn suddenly stopped. The hair on his body stood up straight, like a cat's fur when scared. "Get down," he whispered. They both dropped to the ground behind a large rock. Moments later, a flying machine passed overhead. It was sleek and black, not like the research vessels Juwoo knew. "Pirates," Dawn said, his voice hard. "Resource raiders. They find planets like this and take what they want, even if it destroys the ecosystem." "How do you know?" Juwoo asked. Dawn touched his hair-covered chest. "The hair knows. It has memories." He looked troubled. I think our crash wasn't an accident." The idea hit Juwoo like cold water. "You mean they shot us down? To eliminate witnesses, perhaps, or to steal our research?" Dawn's 4 eyes narrowed. "They're hunting any survivors." They stayed hidden until the flying machine was gone. Then they changed direction, moving more carefully. Dawn led them through narrow canyons and under rock overhangs, where they would be harder to spot from above. By midday, the heat was unbearable. They found shelter in a small cave. As they rested, a sound came from outside. Voices. "Check this area," someone said in a rough voice. The scanner picked up movement. Juwoo and Dawn pressed themselves against the back of the cave. There was nowhere to run. 2 figures entered the cave. They wore black suits with breathing masks. Each carried a weapon. Their eyes swept the darkness. Juwoo held her breath. The pirates were looking right at them, but somehow didn't see them. After a moment, the pirates left, continuing their search elsewhere. "How?" Juwoo whispered when they were gone. Dawn's hair was moving strangely, bending the light around them. "The hair," he said. "It can change to match our surroundings, like the lizards of this planet that change color to hide." Juwoo stared at him in wonder. "It's adapting, taking on more abilities." They continued their journey when it was safer. By nightfall, they could see lights in the distance, the research station. But there was a problem. Several black ships were parked around it. Pirates had taken over the station. "We can't just walk in there," Juwoo said. "They'll capture us or worse." Dawn looked at the station, then back at Juwoo. The hair on his body rippled with purpose. "We need that communication system," he said. "And I think I have a way to get it." His hair began to stretch out from his body, forming shapes like hands and tools. It moved with surprising strength and control. "What can you do?" Juwoo asked, both amazed and a little frightened by what Dawn was becoming. "Whatever we need," Dawn answered. "The pirates aren't the only hunters on this planet now." Juwoo and Dawn watched the research station from a safe distance. They counted 8 pirates moving around the buildings. Guards stood at each entrance with large guns. "We need a plan," Juwoo whispered. Dawn sat very still, his eyes closed. The hair on his body rippled in waves, like it was thinking. "There is more to this planet than we know," he said finally. "The hair is showing me things." "What things?" Juwoo asked. "Life. Connections." Dawn placed his hand on the red ground. "Under the sand, everything is connected by tiny threads, like roots but different. They link all living things on Eridus." Juwoo's scientist mind raced. "Like a mycelium network. Some fungi on Earth do that. They connect trees and plants, helping them share nutrients and information." "Yes, but bigger, much bigger." Dawn opened his eyes. "And I can connect to it." As Juwoo watched, the hair on Dawn's hand grew longer, stretching down into the sand. It seemed to merge with something underneath. Dawn's body went rigid, and his 4 eyes widened. "I see it all," he whispered. The entire planet. It's aware. Aware? You mean the planet is alive? Juwu couldn't believe what she was hearing. Not alive like you or me, but aware. It watches. It learns. Don's voice sounded different, deeper somehow, and it's in pain. Through his connection to the planet's network, Don learned that the pirates had been on Eritis for months. They were drilling deep into the ground, taking rare minerals. Their machines cut through the connection threads, damaging the entire system. The planet chose us, Don said, his hair withdrawing from the ground. It guided that plant thorn to me. Your hair and my body were just what it needed to create a translator. Juwu sat back, amazed. So the planet engineered your transformation. To communicate. Yes, and to help. Don stood up. The pirates must be stopped. They're destroying too much. That night, they moved closer to the station. The hair on Don's body changed color to match the darkness, making him nearly invisible. Juwu stayed close to him, hidden by the same effect. They reached the back wall of the station. A single guard stood there, looking bored. Wait here, Don whispered. He moved forward alone. The hair on his body extended outward, forming a shape like a desert animal. It scurried away from them, making noise in the darkness. The guard turned toward the sound, raising his weapon. As he walked away to check it out, Don moved behind him. More hair extended from Don's body, wrapping around the guard's mouth and arms. In seconds, the guard was tied up and silent. How did you do that? Juwu asked when Don returned to her. The hair is strong, he said, and it obeys my thoughts. They entered the station through a small service door. Inside, they found empty hallways. Most of the pirates were asleep. They moved quietly toward the main control room. In the control room, they found what they needed: a working communication system. Juwu began to type a message to send to the nearest space station. Hurry, Don said, watching the door. Someone's coming. Juwu finished the message and sent it. A small light on the console blinked green. The message was on its way. We have to go, Don said. Too late. The door opened, and 3 pirates walked in. They saw Juwu and raised their weapons. Don't move, one shouted. Don stepped in front of Juwu. The hair on his body began to move, growing longer and thicker. It spread out like a shield between them and the pirates. What the hell is that thing? One pirate asked, backing up. Shoot it, another yelled. They fired their weapons. The energy blasts hit Don's hair shield and stopped, absorbed completely. The hair glowed blue where the blasts had hit, then seemed to grow even stronger. Run, Don told Juwu. Get back to the ship. Help is coming. I won't leave you, she said. Don turned to look at her. His eyes were glowing the same blue as his hair. I'm not alone, he said. The planet is with me. The hair spread out more, filling the room like a living thing. The pirates screamed as it reached for them. Juwu ran, hearing the sounds of struggle behind her. She prayed that Don would be okay, that this strange connection with Eritis would protect him. And somewhere deep in the planet, something ancient and patient was finally taking action. Juwu ran through the dark hallways of the research station. Alarms blared around her. Red lights flashed on the walls. Behind her, she heard shouts and the sound of weapons firing. She turned a corner and almost ran into 2 more pirates. They grabbed for her, but she ducked and slipped past them. The human is heading for the exit. One of them yelled into a communication device. Juwu found a small storage room and hid inside. Her heart beat fast as she tried to think. She couldn't leave Don behind. But what could she do against so many armed pirates? The door to the storage room suddenly opened. Juwu pressed herself against the wall, ready to fight. But it was Don who entered, his hair-covered body glowing faintly blue in the darkness. Don, you're alive, Juwu whispered with relief. They couldn't hurt me, he said, but there are too many. The leader has called for backup. Through the small window in the room, They could see more black ships landing outside the station. Dozens more pirates were arriving. "What do we do now?" Ju asked. Don's hair rippled with energy. "We need to get back to the crashed ship. The planet is telling me something important is there." They slipped out of the station during the confusion of the new arrivals. Using Don's ability to blend with their surroundings, they made it past the guards and back into the desert. They traveled through the night, guided by the light of the 3 moons. As they walked, Daon told Ju what he had learned from his connection with the planet. "The pirates aren't just taking minerals," he explained. "They're looking for something specific, something the planet has been hiding for thousands of years." "What is it?" Ju asked. "A crystal," Daon said. "It formed at the core of Eridus. It holds energy like nothing else in the galaxy. With it, they could power weapons that could destroy whole worlds." By dawn, they reached their crashed ship. It looked smaller somehow, partially covered by the red sand that was always blowing across the desert. "Why are we here?" Ju asked. "Our beacon is still broken." Daon didn't answer. He walked to a spot near the ship and knelt down. His hair extended into the sand, connecting with the planet's network again. The ground began to shake. Ju stepped back as a crack formed in the earth. From deep below, something rose up. A clear crystal the size of Ju's hand, glowing with blue-green light. "The planet trusts us with this," Daon said, taking the crystal carefully. "It knows your kind, humans. It has met them before. You are different from the pirates. You study and learn. You don't just take." The moment was broken by the sound of engines. 3 pirate ships appeared in the sky, heading straight for them. "They tracked us," Ju said. The ships landed, and armed pirates jumped out. Among them was a tall figure with a scar across his face, their leader. "Give us the crystal," the leader demanded, pointing a large weapon at them. "We know the planet revealed it to you." Daon stood in front of Ju, his hair forming a protective shield around them both. "This doesn't belong to you," he said, "or to us. It belongs to Eridus." The leader laughed. "A planet doesn't own anything. It's just a rock floating in space." He fired his weapon. The energy blast hit Dawn's hair shield, but this time it was too powerful. The shield weakened, and Dawn stumbled back. The pirates moved closer, weapons ready. "Last chance," the leader said. "Give us the crystal or die." Ju looked at Dawn, worried. His hair was damaged, parts of it burned away by the powerful weapon. But then something strange happened. The crystal in Dawn's hand began to pulse with light. The light spread to his hair, healing the damaged parts and making it grow even thicker and stronger. "The planet is more than just a rock," Dawn said, his voice deeper and more powerful than before. "It is alive. And so am I." His hair exploded outward, thousands of strands moving like living whips. They wrapped around the pirates' weapons, crushing them. More hair formed a wall between the pirates and their ships. The pirates stepped back in fear as Dawn rose into the air, lifted by his own hair, the crystal glowing brightly in his hand. "This is why humans are respected in the galaxy," he said, "because they understand something you don't. Life finds a way. And sometimes, it just needs a little help to fight back." The pirate leader looked up at Dawn, floating above him. Fear replaced the confidence in his eyes. "What are you?" he asked. Dawn didn't answer. His hair continued to move around the pirates, tying them up one by one. None could escape. Ju watched in amazement. The shy, wounded alien diplomat she had saved with a desperate act was now something else entirely. Something powerful and strange. When all the pirates were captured, Daon floated back down to the ground. The crystal in his hand glowed brighter, then sank into his skin, disappearing from view. "The crystal is safe now," he told Ju. "It's part of me, like the hair." They used the pirates' own ships to take them back to the research station. There, Ju found the long-range communication system and made contact with a passing linerite vessel. "Help is coming," she said happily. They'll be here in 2 days. That night, while the pirates were locked in their own holding cells, Juwu and Don stood outside under the 3 moons of Eridus. The red desert looked almost beautiful in the silver light. "What happens now?" Juwu asked. "When we leave?" Don was quiet for a long time. His hair moved gently in the night breeze. "I don't think I can leave," he said finally. "I'm connected to this planet now. I'm part of it, and it's part of me." Juwu felt sadness in her heart. "Then I'll stay too." Don turned to her, surprise in all 4 of his eyes. "You would stay here, on this harsh world. Why?" "Because that's what humans do," Juwu said simply. "We adapt. We help. We don't leave friends behind." As they stood there, something strange began to happen. The ground around them started to glow with soft blue light, the same light that came from Don's hair. The light spread outward in a circle, getting wider and wider. "What's happening?" Juwu asked. "The planet wants to speak to you," Don said, his voice changing again. It sounded like many voices speaking as one. "Through me." Don's eyes glowed bright blue. When he spoke again, it wasn't really him speaking. "For 1,000 years we have watched the stars," said the voice of Eridus through Don. "Many have come to this world. Some to study, some to take. None understood until now." "Understood what?" Juwu asked. "That all life is connected. That helping each other is the way of the future." The blue light formed images in the air, pictures of other worlds, other beings. Juwu saw the history of Eridus, how it had been visited by many species over thousands of years, how it had watched and learned from each one. "We needed a bridge," the planet's voice continued. "Someone who could connect to us and speak for us. Someone with a body that could move among the stars, but a mind connected to our network." "Don," Juwu said, "you chose him." "We guided the crash," the voice admitted. "We are sorry for the others who died. But we saw in you, human, the quality we needed most." "In me? What quality?" "Compassion. The willingness to sacrifice for others. To use what you have to help someone different from yourself." Juwu touched her short hair, remembering how she had cut it to save Don. That simple act of cutting your hair to save him showed us everything we needed to know about humans. You are the species we have been waiting for. The blue light faded. Don blinked, and his eyes returned to normal. "Did you hear it?" he asked. Juwu nodded, still amazed by what she had learned. "The planet has been searching for someone to help it communicate with the rest of the galaxy." "Not just communicate," Don said. "Protect. Share knowledge. The network under this planet contains wisdom from 1,000,000 years of life." He touched his hair-covered chest, where the crystal now rested inside him. "And I am its voice now." The next day, they saw a ship approach from the sky. It wasn't the Linearite rescue vessel they were expecting. It was much larger. "Who is that?" Juwu asked. Don smiled. "Friends," the planet called them. "The first of many who will come to learn from Eridus." As the ship landed, Juwu realized that her simple act of compassion, cutting her hair to save a wounded alien, had changed everything. Not just for her and Don, but for the entire galaxy. 3 months passed since the day Juwu had cut her hair to save Don with a cactus thorn. The research station on Eridus was no longer a small outpost. It had grown into a busy center of activity. Ships from 12 different worlds had come to Eridus. Scientists, diplomats, and explorers filled the once empty buildings. They all came for the same reason: to learn from the planet and its special connection with Dawn. Juwu stood on a new observation deck, watching the activity below. Her hair had grown back, now reaching her shoulders. She smiled as she saw Dawn walking among a group of visitors, his hair-covered body glowing softly in the morning light. "Dr. Kim," a voice called from behind her. It was Captain Minho of the Earth Science Fleet. "The Council is ready for your report." Juwu nodded and followed him to the main meeting room. There, representatives from many worlds sat around a large table. Some looked like humans, others were very different. Beings with multiple limbs, unusual skin, or no solid form at all. "Dr. Kim, please tell us about your latest findings," said the head of the council, a tall being with silver skin. Juwu touched the screen in front of her, and images appeared on the wall. They showed microscopic views of the hair that covered Dawn's body. "We've discovered that the combination of human DNA and the planet's biological material has created something entirely new," she explained. "The hair isn't just alive. It can adapt to almost any environment or purpose." She showed more images, small samples of the hair helping sick plants grow, cleaning polluted water, and even healing injured animals. "We've developed a treatment based on this discovery," Juwu continued. "It can heal wounds that were once thought impossible to treat. Already, it has saved lives on 3 different worlds." The council members nodded with approval. One of them, a small blue being, spoke up. "And what of the crystal? Is it secure?" Before Juwu could answer, the door opened and Dawn entered. The room fell silent. Even after months, many still found his appearance strange and wonderful. The hair covering his body shifted colors slightly as he walked, responding to the emotions in the room. "The crystal remains part of me," Dawn said, his voice carrying easily to every corner. "It is safe, and the planet has shown me how to create smaller versions, enough to power your worlds without weapons or destruction." He held out his hand, and a tiny crystal appeared in his palm, glowing with blue-green light. "This small piece can power an entire city for 100 years," he said, "and it will never harm the planet. Aridus gives these freely, but only to those who promise to use them for peace." After the meeting, Juwu and Dawn walked together in the garden that had been planted outside the station. Plants from Earth grew alongside the strange umbrella plants of Aridus. They seemed to be thriving together. "I received a message from the Linerate High Council today," Dawn said. "They've named me the official ambassador of Aridus, the first planet-connected diplomat in the galaxy." Juwu smiled. They couldn't have chosen better. They stopped at the edge of the garden, looking out at the red desert. In the distance, they could see new green patches growing where Dawn had planted special seeds, the beginning of forests that would one day cover parts of Aridus. "Did you ever imagine this would happen?" Dawn asked. "When you used your hair and that thorn to save me?" Juwu shook her head. "I was just trying to help a friend. That's all." "That's exactly why the planet chose your species," Dawn said. His hair moved gently in the breeze. "Humans don't need to be the strongest or the smartest to change the galaxy. They just need to be kind." As the 3 suns began to set, painting the sky in beautiful colors, more ships appeared on the horizon, coming to learn from Aridus and its unusual representatives. Juwu thought about her grandmother's old stories of helping others, of using what you have to make a difference. She never would have guessed that cutting her hair to help a wounded alien with a cactus thorn would change the course of the galaxy. But that was the power of a simple act of kindness. Sometimes, the smallest choices create the biggest changes. And as Juwu stood beside Dawn, watching the new visitors arrive, she knew this was just the beginning of something wonderful.